Hey, good morning, everyone.
Happy Friday.
Hey, indeed, happy Friday. Happy second day of this conference.
Topic.
Thank you, Andrew.
Topic.
So the topic for today, if that's what you're getting at, Edwina, yeah. So this session, we'll talk about what pre-service teacher or student teachers' perspectives on what they think makes for effective mentoring habits, practices, strategies. So I'll share some insights from a project I've been working on, and hopefully we'll get a good deal of time to talk about it together and in breakout rooms.
Matt, I'm happy to set up breakout rooms for you when you need them. If you just let me know how many in each room, for how long they should be going, that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Yay. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, I think when it comes 4 to 5 per breakout room and keep it consistent, there'll be a few different times I'm planning on that. So hopefully the same people can hop into that room, and then maybe also offload the recording. Oh, you already started recording. Oh, okay. I'm better watch what I say. We'll wait just maybe a few more moments as people leave their opening session and decide what session they want to attend. So some people might be trickling in.
Uh-oh.
All right, maybe wait just a few more moments. All right, that sounds good. Well, good morning again, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. I hope a great deal of insights and talking with folks yesterday. You got a lot from the experience. I hope the same is true for today. And maybe I spoke too soon. I don't know if you're hearing all the doorbell rings as people enter. As host, I get to hear those things, so a little distracting. Anyways, thank you all for being here. So as I mentioned previously, this session we'll talk about student teachers or pre-service teachers' thoughts about what makes for effective mentoring practices, particularly as it relates to their work advocating or working on advocacy and equity work or teaching. So my name is Matt Wallace. I am a supervisor at UC Davis. I primarily work with single subject math, although this is not math specific at all. So this is going to go across all the different grades and content areas that are part of the Davis program. Before we get too far into things, I'm hoping all of you can just share a little bit about you in the chat. So if you could take a moment and just share. Your name will pop up when you enter this, but you can, in addition to that, maybe share the school or university you're affiliated with, and then what grades and what content areas do you supervise? So I'll give you a moment to enter that into the chat. All right, lots of stuff pouring in. Thank you. Looks like we have a wide range of different grade levels and topics. Great. And representing lots of different institutions as well. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to share with you some norms I'm hoping that we'll all agree to as we share some time together for this hour. So first and foremost, I want to keep this informal and as much as possible anyway. So feel free to, as questions arise or comments or insights or anything come up, feel free to type those things into the chat. Also interrupt me. Go ahead and unmute yourself and just pose away. I am happy to to answer any questions or anything that comes up along the way. So please don't hesitate to do that at any point in time. Also, just some other things I think are important to keep in mind is just to monitor your level of activity. And if you find yourself maybe speaking too much or taking up a lot of the airspace, take this as an opportunity to step back and allow others to have opportunities to share, to comment and so forth. And maybe if you find yourself not speaking up too much, use this as an opportunity to put some of your ideas out there and really enliven and enrich the conversation. Also, I really want to encourage everyone to empower each other, and that can take a lot of different forms. But I hope, among other things, it involves inclusive language that respects all our various backgrounds and identities and cultures and so on. I also hope that it ensures that all of our voices, our various and unique perspectives are valued and heard. And I also want to make sure that we're working to make a safe environment we all feel comfortable to talk about and share our truths. Also, I'm a big and firm believer in rough draft ideas. I hope that you won't wait and wait for a finished, polished, perfect idea to share, but rather put out those rough draft ideas, those things that are not polished, those things that are incomplete. I often find when you do those, that really leads to a lot of great conversation and discussion. So don't be selfish. Don't keep your ideas to yourself because you want to wait until it's in its perfect form. Go ahead and put that out there as early and as rough as it may be. And lastly, I always think it's important to step outside your comfort zone because that's really where the learning happens. So please push yourself, whatever makes you a little bit uncomfortable. I hope that you push yourself to do that. And I think that's a good thing. Okay, so I am going to start with this quote because I really think it speaks to a lot of things. So let's read it aloud to give it some voice. Study after study shows that experienced and newly certified teachers alike see clinical experience, in other words, student teaching, as a powerful, sometimes the single most powerful component of teacher preparation. And I want to start here because the work that we do as supervisors, obviously, it involves the clinical experience or the student teaching. And it is a really the work that we do is critically important. But we're not the only part of this equation. Mentor teachers, sometimes called resident teachers, consulting teachers, or cooperating teachers, are also a part of this equation. So that is what a large part of what we're going to talk about today. And what does that mean for our work as supervisors? So some important considerations as far as mentor. I'm going to use the word mentor teachers, but just know that resident teachers, cooperating teachers, consulting teachers, whatever you might use with your program, we're talking about the same thing. So importantly, this kind of speaks to that earlier quotes. Mentor teachers, they play a crucial role in the preparation of pre-service teachers, and pre-service teachers find this the exact same thing. Our pre-service teachers or student teachers often cite their mentor teacher as one of the most influential parts of their training. One of the ways, or a lot of the things that they learn, student teachers that is, involves well, one, their teaching and the practices that they pick up while they work with that student teacher, but also their beliefs about teaching and just their knowledge or understanding of what teaching and the teaching profession entails. So they learn a lot, but also importantly to note is that if these same student teachers, whether through their program or whether through their student teaching or perhaps both or something else, if they're not adequately prepared to support the diverse needs and backgrounds of the students, they might adopt or fall back on misconceptions or myths, and that includes a lot of things. Among them, the thing that's our culturally and linguistically diverse youth might be less capable than their white counterparts, that everyone should be taught the exact same, and their individual needs and differences aren't necessarily important, or language or anything else for that matter isn't something that necessarily needs to be taken into account. So it's really important, in other words, that our student teachers aren't left to their own devices to figure these things out. That probably goes without saying. But the work our mentor teachers do and should not, the equity and advocacy work that they do is really important to bring to the forefront so that our student teachers don't fall back on or rely on some untruths. So I want to invite you all to a breakout room now. And in that breakout room, a few things. One is just quickly introduce yourself. Take a moment just to say hello. Hopefully you recognize some people from yesterday. And then take some time to chat about what your thoughts are or ideas about effective mentoring practices. That could be both from you as a supervisor who mentors student teachers, but also mentor teachers and the work that they do to hopefully effectively support the student teachers in their care, particularly as that relates to advocacy and equity. And also, how as a supervisor can you or how do you work with your mentor teachers? And I don't know if you work with student teachers for an entire year, maybe a semester, maybe something else, but however you interact with these mentor teachers, what is that interaction like? What are some of the things that you do as you work with a mentor teacher to support your student teachers? So let me put these questions in the chat so you have them as a reference, hopefully, in your breakout rooms. And Andrew, maybe we can do 7 minutes for this. So I have 9:41 now. So at 9:48, we'll all come back and continue on.
And I'm happy to stick around in the main room in case anyone else joins.
Awesome.
And I'll
Thank you.
send out some, yeah.
Just like old times. I'm gonna join a breakout room shortly, but I'll give everyone a chance to
Cool.
meet and introduce themselves first.
And sorry about the noises. I didn't think about the fact that other people can do this too. I think just the host can for what
Yeah,
it's worth. But
I think so too. It's fun. We're being recorded right now. I don't mind sharing this though. I don't know why it reminded me of last night. My daughter was making popcorn, microwave popcorn, and I don't know. I guess the trick is you're supposed to listen to the pops, and after yeah, I don't know, maybe there's like 15 seconds between kernels popping, and that's when you know it's perfect, right time to get out that popcorn. Anyhow, so I was kind of thinking the same thing. It was like every couple of seconds I hear ding dong, ding dong. I'm like, all right, let me wait. So it's about 30 seconds before that pop or that doorbell. And then that 30 seconds was up. I was like, sweet, let's move on. And then all of a sudden the popcorn kept popping. It threw me off. Anyway, I am looking forward to your session next. Yes.
yeah. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it, but no, I think it'll be good.
Sounds good. I'm gonna well, we have our kickoff next week.
Mhm.
And my apologies for waiting until just now to bring that up, but I'm hopeful you'll be there, and I'll send you, we should connect and chat more about that and our group. Anyhow,
Yeah.
I'm gonna join some breakout rooms.
Sounds good. I'll go ahead and close the rooms now. Does that sound good? Cool.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you were able to get through some, if not all, of these questions. And I want to encourage you to keep in mind those conversations and your thoughts about effective mentoring practices and how we might work with our mentor teachers to support our student teachers to teach for advocacy and equity. So what I'd like to share with you now is a project that involved what we have at UC Davis as a mentor teacher award. And here's what I mean by that. Each year, for the past 4 or 5 years, we've invited our student teachers to nominate a mentor for a mentorship award. And this nomination involves just a short letter. We limit it to 1 page, no more than a page letter, that asks student teachers to make a compelling case for why their mentor is deserving of the award. And that's, importantly, that's about it. There's no more direction than that. Simply just make a compelling case for why they think their mentor should receive this award. And it's not required that our student teachers submit these letters. It is all voluntary. And then after these nominations are submitted, then program faculty, we review the nomination letters, and then we select 2 mentor teachers to receive the award, 1 multiple subject winner and 1 single subject winner. And importantly, people who win, the mentor teachers who win, they get a $100 gift card. That's in addition to any sort of stipends they might get otherwise, as well as a plaque and what I'll just call a social media blast. We try to put it on all our social media pages, these winners, with pictures and shout outs and all those other things. So what happened over these past actually 4 years, from 2019 on, we received about 94 nominations in total. So we have a relatively small program. So that represents about 26% of the enrollment during this time period. So about 1 in 4 teachers in these past 4 years have submitted a nomination. About half were from multiple subjects, and about half were from single subject, a little bit more from multiple subject. But that makes sense because typically I think our multiple subject program is a little larger than our single subject program. And in total, these 94 nominations represent about 10, these represent 10 different school districts, which is almost all the school districts that we work with in our program. And it represents, unfortunately, not kindergarten or TK, but 1st grade through 12th grade. And I don't know if that says much about our program or anything else. I don't know how many TK or kindergarten placements we have as a single subject supervisor. Anyways, so there's that. And so taking these nomination letters, one of the things I did is I went back and looked at all of these 94 letters with an eye towards these 6 mentoring practices. And the reason I chose these particular 6 mentoring practices is because this comes from a website called mentorteachers.org. And it is a website that we direct all of our new mentor teachers to as part of their 10 hours of training prior to taking on a student teacher. So that new CTC requirement that all new mentor, resident, or consulting teachers spend some time training on good mentoring practices and so forth. One of the things we do in our program is we send or direct these mentor teachers to the site to learn a little bit about these 6 mentoring practices. So I don't know if you're familiar with the website. It's a great website. I encourage you to check it out. But more importantly for right now, if you're not familiar with these mentoring practices, I think it is important that you do spend some time. So what I'm going to do is in the chat, I'm going to send a link, and this link will give you a short overview of each of these 6 mentoring practices. So I will mute myself so that it's a quiet time, and I'll start this 5-minute clock to give you 5 minutes to try to make sense of all of these 6 mentoring practices. You don't have to know all the insides and outs, just really the basics is really all that's necessary. And then if you want to know more later, I definitely encourage you to check out that mentorteachers.org site, because it goes into detail, far more detail for each of these 6 mentoring practices than what we have time for here. So I'll meet myself, nothing is wrong, just giving you some quiet time to read about these mentoring practices before moving on.
Matt, I think you also have a question in the chat.
Oh, do I? Okay. Do we have education specialist candidates? No, we do not. So our program is limited to, currently anyways, so we have multiple subjects credential, and then for our single subject programs, we have ag, we have history, social studies, ELA, math, and science. And then we have bilingual authorizations in Spanish and Mandarin, but that is where our program ends in terms of the credentials we offer.
Thank you for answering that.
All right. I noticed some questions in the chat. All the questions concerning equity and advocacy, hang on. I'm going to hopefully answer those questions very shortly. Other questions came up. One about how I asked the mentor teachers how they feel about the award. So one of the things we do is we share the letters with each of the, regardless of who the award winner is or not, we share the letters with all of the mentor teachers who have been nominated, and all of I can't speak for all of them, but after we share them, oftentimes in response, I get very big thank yous and sometimes even comments about emotions and being brought to tears and so forth, just by being having the opportunity to read those letters. We don't often share such things, student teachers with their mentor teachers, so that they get the opportunity to read these letters is really has been a really positive experience for them. And there are some mentor teachers who get, another question was about if there's common people who show up year after year. There are. We haven't had any repeat award winners, and that hasn't been by, we haven't tried to avoid that by anything. It just happens to be that each year we've always elected to award to somebody else. So who knows, maybe we'll have to cross that bridge a little bit later. But at least at this point in time, not quite yet. So here's one of the things I did initially with these letters is I went to each letter and I looked for places where these things were referenced in their nomination letters. So I just went back and really coded, like, here's a moment where co-teaching happened, and here's a moment in this letter where making thinking explicit happened, and here's a moment where something else happened. So that's initially, and there could be some double codes too, to be clear, because I think to the point in that PDF that I shared with you is these things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. It's ideal when they're all working together. So sometimes some things were receive multiple codes. So just kind of as an example, here is an excerpt from one particular letter, and this nominee wrote, a nominator wrote, one of her strengths as a mentor is how collaborative she is. For example, this year our class piloted a new math curriculum. My mentor teacher encouraged me very early on in the school year to lead more and more of the math lessons. We were soundboards for one another, reflecting and collaborating to optimize our math lessons. Her feedback is always honest and constructive, and it helped me build stamina and confidence in my teaching abilities. Her willingness to collaborate showed that she trusted me and saw my potential. She pushed me to take on more responsibilities, even when I was hesitant myself. Additionally, she collaborates well with her colleagues, whether they're her grade level colleagues, the reading resource specialist, or the behavior specialist. My mentor teacher never hesitates to ask others questions in order to maximize her teaching efficiency. So using this as an example, so these are moments of co-teaching where the student teacher and the mentor teacher are working together to teach in front of the classroom. So these would have been coded, that co-teaching practice. And here's another moment where the student teacher and mentor teacher are planning together and they're getting feedback. So this would have been a code for that. And still, here's another one where the mentor teacher is modeling the work of teaching. Importantly, the work of teaching isn't just standing up in front of the classroom and giving instruction. So anything that teachers do that can be modeled, even when it's asking colleagues for help, support, talking with parents, sending emails, grading, all of that gets incorporated in the modeling the work of teaching. So I went back and I just simply looked for these practices in these letters. The next thing I did was, now that I had these things coded, I went back and looked at each of these codes and looked for any text that involved anything concerning advocacy and equity. And I used perhaps the most broadest of definitions as possible. So with equity, I'm thinking about anything that's trying to make content or instruction or just things more accessible by removing barriers. Maybe it's culturally relevant, maybe it's individual needs, whether it's affirming positive identities, whether it's social justice related contexts, anything that could be considered equity. I went back and looked for that, as well as advocacy work too, speaking up for others, supporting others, all those sorts of things. So perhaps as broad as you could think about equity and advocacy, that's what I went back and looked at each of these codes and I said, okay, here's a code for this. Is there any text in here that could be considered equity work or advocacy work or anything else for that matter? So I tried to just start there, and then I was going to work my way in to see what else was going on. So here's what I found in doing that work. So what you see on the left are all the different practices, 6 mentoring practices. And all nominees were identified as at least demonstrating one effective mentoring practice. So every letter identified at least one of those 6 things you see on the list there on the left. The max was 5. So some mentor teachers in their letters, their student teacher noted that the 5 of these things, and I'm not aware of these student teachers knowing about these 6 practices. That might be important to note too. But in their letters, they're mentioning that their mentor teachers are demonstrating these practices, and some of them had 5 of them. The average, if this means anything, was 2.5. So across all these letters, these nominators are noting that their mentor teachers were engaging in at least 2.5 of these, if that means anything, these practices. Also noteworthy, analyzing student work was the only practice that was never mentioned, which is not to say that it didn't happen, but it wasn't brought up in any of these letters. And about 46% of all these nomination letters, again, using my very broad definition of equity and advocacy, about 46% of all these nominations included some comments, texts, and so forth that were related to that broad definition. Here is a word cloud, just kind of highlighting how common or the frequency of each of these practices. So you can see co-teaching, that's the biggest phrase. So that was the one that was most commonly referenced in these nomination letters. Debrief is the second, pre and post, or pre and debrief is the second biggest word there. So that was the second most frequently referred to practice in the letters. And then modeling, and then co-planning, and then making thinking explicit. So that was the least frequent, was the making thinking explicit. And one of the things that was particularly interesting in this was that modeling happened to be the only practice where the student teachers made comments related to advocacy and equity work. None of the other practices had any text that were related to advocacy and equity. So here's an example of that. Oh, before we get to that, so just some important notes here. So this is the definition of modeling the work of teaching, and importantly, as they note about halfway through, the work of teaching involves a lot more than just teaching. You can also model how to interact with other teachers, interact with parents, whether that's face-to-face, on the phone, or via email, interact with students outside of instructional time, deal with management issues, and inquire into your own practice. So there's a lot of different things that can be modeled. It's not necessarily limited to the work that happens in the classroom, always important to note. And here is a example. So this comes directly from one of the letters, and I'm going to read this to give it voice. So this comes from a single subject social studies nomination. So in social studies, you have lots of conversations that can quickly go in a way that you don't want them to. My mentor teacher was always very on top of making sure his class was a safe environment and that all students felt like they could voice their opinions. One day, a student said something racist. My mentor teacher met with the student and his parents to explain to them that the student can't say racist things because there are students in the room who may be deeply offended. The student didn't do anything like that again. The way my mentor teacher advocated for all the students in the room was meaningful to me. When stuff like that pops up, you have to put your foot down in a way that sets the tone. Later on, when I was teaching, there was a student who made a homophobic joke. I addressed the student by saying, you saying something as a joke is normalizing this attack on people based on their sexual orientation. What the class saw was me putting my foot down. I took that directly from my mentor teacher, advocating for all the students in the room, even the silent ones, or just different student populations in general, so they know it is unacceptable to say such things. So here what we see is the student teacher in this nomination letter talking about modeling the work of teaching. So this is a moment where the teacher modeled how to respond when something comes up in the classroom, and then how to advocate for all students in the room, and even described it as putting your foot down as something that was done. And then this is not necessarily connected to code, but I thought this was particularly interesting, is that the student teacher even talks about how they adopted or took up that idea or that practice and put it into action later on in the exact same classroom with students. Here are just some other shorter examples of a variety of different ways to think about equity and advocacy. So even after my full takeover, I had the opportunity to observe my mentor teacher at work during her AVID period, and it stands out so clearly how much she truly believes in every student and how deeply she urges them to succeed, not just academically, but also in the everyday and future aspects of their lives. So having high expectations for all students. Another one, his tireless work and effort to improve the lives of his students as a parent, and his passion to be an advocate for marginalized students is supported by firm action. My mentor teacher helped establish the ethnic studies curriculum and program at the high school, and upon observing his instruction of this curriculum has inspired the passion necessary for students to make deep and impactful change. And so one more, my mentor teacher is a master at taking a lesson from our curriculum books and bringing in new ideas and formats to differentiate instruction for all levels of learners. She includes physical movements, songs, visuals, etc. into all her lessons. So just trying to make things more accessible for students in this case. And that. So some important notes here. One is that just because the highlight or modeling the work of teaching was a practice that was brought up in these letters doesn't necessarily mean that teachers weren't doing these other practices as it relates to advocacy and equity. I think that's important to be clear. Just because it wasn't in the letters doesn't mean it's not happening. It just wasn't brought up in the letters, and that's really all we can conclude, at least at this point. And it's not clear if the student teachers wrote about these things in the letters because they really value it, or they think the people who are going to read these letters value it. In other words, they're trying to get their mentors an award. So maybe they're tailoring this to their audience. And that's why they're putting it in there, or maybe there's something else that we don't know about too. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but all that said, I think it's really interesting that these student teachers do notice when their mentor teachers are modeling for advocacy and equity. Those things are happening, which is good, and our student teachers are noticing it. Also important, I think is really interesting, is that they're noticing lots of different ways that our mentor teachers are doing equity and advocacy work. So I think that's also important to know too. And there weren't like common themes like everyone was doing this or everyone was doing that. Now that I've shared with you some of the results from that, I'd like to invite you back to your breakout rooms and give you an opportunity just to kind of unpack things. I think that's really important. So what are your initial thoughts, reactions, wonders, questions, and so forth to these results? How does this compare to your initial thoughts? So earlier you talked about effective mentoring practices. Were you spot on? Were these contradicting some of your initial thoughts? Maybe something else? And also, how might we use these results? So now that we know a little bit about what student teachers like or think is effective, how might that be useful to us as supervisors in the work that we do with these same sorts of student teachers? Let me put these questions in the chat so that you have them to as reference as you discuss. There we are. And Andrew, if you can, we'll do about 10 minutes. So 10:11, 10:21, we'll bring everyone back and continue. Forgot to mute my email. No, Jeannie, are you can you get to your breakout room? Does that work?
Yes, she could. Yeah.
Did I miss anything in the chat while that was? I saw lots of things.
Folks were making comments, but I don't think there were any. Oh, there was a question. Oh, I missed this. Can the links be reshared, please? Oh, and then, okay. No, never mind. Kristen, do you need a breakout room? It looks. Gotcha. Okay. That was interesting. This is cool stuff. I had no idea you were doing this work around those letters.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I had some time on my hands, but up until now, this has just been stuff I've just been sharing in our weekly meetings. I didn't have IRB to share this more broadly than that, and I finally got that taken care of not too long ago. So I figured it was due time to at least do something more with this and just share with in-house. Maybe I don't know if there's too much more to do with this, but I think it'd be pretty cool if other programs did it, and then we could pull that data together and look for something, themes more broadly. I don't know, patterns, that is. I think the next challenge, I think, is I don't know if we'll get to this today, but one of the questions I have is, so how can we, I don't feel like there's synergy yet between like what we're doing in coursework and what is always happening at the placements, and it'd be nice to get more in step with that. And it can't just be programs saying, here, mentor, I need you to do this. So I mean, I guess it could, but I don't know if that's what should happen.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think about how do we get to that place where things are more synced up, I guess.
Yeah. And I think we have, I mean, in Davis anyways, we have the nice, we're small enough to where we can be a little more selective in placements than bigger programs where from what I understand anyways, I mean, really it's just email blasts to see, hey, who's up for it this year.
I've gotten those.
Yeah. So I imagine it'd be far more difficult with programs like that and that big in size, but I'm sure it's not impossible. Anyways, I'm gonna jump around to some rooms.
Sounds good.
10:30 is end time, yes?
Yes, that is correct.
Shoot,
Um,
all right.
yeah, should I bring
Yeah,
folks
let's
back?
bring them back, yeah. I'll blame it on my poor time management.
No, I think we should have ended that opening thing a little bit earlier.
Get that bike yet?
Yeah, I did.
Hey, all right.
I need to fix it, but it's in my garage.
One step at a time, progress.
Yep.
Important. Hey, welcome back, everyone. So I'm noticing we only have about 9 minutes left. I want to move through things a little quickly. I do just want a quick note, though. I hope you had some good conversations. And two, thank you. It looks like as I was just popping in and out of rooms, a lot of you are following our agreements or our norms. Lots of different airtime people, taking different opportunities to share their ideas or thinking. I hope that also is reflective of you. Empowering each other, hopefully sharing some rough draft ideas, not necessarily waiting for those ideas to be polished, and so on. So thank you all for that. So a couple of thoughts I have anyways about how this might be important, and maybe this is already things you're thinking about, or maybe this adds to some of the things you're already thinking about. So if we as supervisors are aware of how our mentor teachers are modeling advocacy and equity work, we can really capitalize on that when we work with our student teachers. Perhaps, for example, when we work with our student teachers as supervisors during pre-briefs or debriefs, we can bring up the work that these mentor teachers are doing and use that as an opportunity to for an idea, as a suggestion, as something they might already be seeing that they might want to incorporate into their lessons and into their practice as we try and nudge them along in making their work or making their teaching more equitable and advocating for all of their students. We could also, if we know what's happening and our student teachers maybe aren't quite aware of what's going on, we can suggest some focus observations. Say, well, really you should observe your mentor when they're doing X, and really get an opportunity to look at it, observe it, and maybe even unpack it or decompose it so that they can get all the different kind of things that are going on in these moments where their mentor teachers are teaching for equity or advocacy. Other things are we might want to encourage our mentor teachers to be really explicit about the work that they're doing in the classroom with students. And that's important because our student teachers may not always notice these things. Maybe it's that they're looking at something else, or maybe they don't even know what it looks like. Or maybe it's something even more different, even something different than that. So it's really important that if we know that these mentor teachers are going on, and this isn't necessarily to say that we need to go in and observe these mentor teachers, but just a short chat, maybe if we show up early and get a chance to talk to them for 5 minutes, or maybe through email, we can ask these mentor teachers, hey, what are you up to? And once we know that, we can really take up on an opportunity to tell them, well, that's great. And I hope that you're able to be explicit about this work. And for what it's worth, some ideas about how they can be explicit. This isn't coming necessarily from a student teacher, mentor teacher perspective, but in my math world, some things that are important for making work explicit. The first thing is you want to name it, and naming it really makes this thing important. So if we put a name to something, then the student teachers know that this is something that's worthy of a name. So as an example, one of the things I shared with you, that student teacher said, put your foot down. So there's a phrase that now we've put a name to this idea, this thing that this mentor teacher does, putting their foot down, what that looks like, all the things that go on with that. So now there's a name to this thing, and then we want to highlight it. So after we say, okay, well, what does put your foot down really look like? That's when the mentor teacher can really highlight what they did. When I did this, when this student made this racist remark, then I met with the parents, and then we had this conversation and made sure that didn't happen again. That's what putting your foot down looks like. And last but not least, it's also important to we'll explain what the goal and the rationale is. So say, well, here's why that might be important. And in this case, the student teacher knew or took away. I don't know how it happened, but the student teacher knew that sets the tone, as they said it, as they put it. So putting your foot down is the thing. Meeting with the parents, that's one way to do it. And that sets the tone so that everyone is well aware of this is going to be a safe space in the classroom to have these conversations that the student teacher was mentioning in the very beginning. Last but not least, another thing is that while as supervisors, we might not necessarily be able to model the work of teaching advocacy and equity in the classroom. I do know some supervisors who do model lessons from time to time, but it isn't something that I'm aware of that happens regularly. But nevertheless, we do have lots of opportunities to talk with our student teachers, and we can have these ideas that we can talk about. We can share these, we can describe this work that other teachers might be doing to model for advocacy and equity, and we can name it, we can describe it, put a name to it. We can unpack it when we highlight it to talk about all the different nuances and things that go into that, and then we can give a rationale for it. And whether we're doing that as suggestions to nudge our student teachers along to do even more, or for something else, this might be an opportunity for us to really take advantage of the fact that while our student teachers are noticing this equity stuff, and if we want to move them along even further, maybe we can take advantage of that. So we only got about 4 minutes left. I know that's not a lot of time, but if there are any, I saw some things coming up in the chat. I'll take a moment to look at them now. But if you have other questions, comments, or insights you'd like to share, I'm happy to try to get to as many as I can. And one thing I don't know if I noted, but I will. So slides and everything else will be on the in the folder for this session. So all the resources you can have access to hopefully later if you like. All right. Well, I guess if thank you all for the comments in the chats. I'd like to. I think it's always important to end with some reflection. So I want to give. We have about 3 minutes left. So I'd like to ask all of you, just think for yourself now. What did you find most interesting, and what do you think that means for your work as a supervisor? So please take a few moments to just think about what you're going to take away from this, and hopefully how you're going to use that this coming year. Which, I don't know about you, but for the program I work with, starts next week.
Hi, Matt. I don't know if you got a chance to see my comment.
No, I'm sorry. What?
So my comment was that I'm a little concerned that there isn't a shared understanding around equity and advocacy, and so, for example, the student is seen and mirroring, stopping anti-Black statements and homophobic statements. But the core curriculum of the math curriculum, at least in the data that you showed, is not being challenged. And so, for example, I mentioned the work of Eric Goodstein, who calls for the development of critical mathematics in high school classrooms, where the math is not just used to teach like culturally relevant math problems, but as a tool for social analysis and for a tool for social transformation. That is not there. And so that's the part where, in my group, I was saying sometimes, the word social justice can mean anything and everything. And, people like Teach for America or even Bill Gates can use social justice. And so the word then loses its meaning. And so if we don't have some shared concepts or understandings around that, then I can say, well, I'm being equitable because I'm allowing everybody to speak in my classroom. And that's where the level of equity remains, is at that level. But we're the deeper issues of advocacy, or really thinking about our content in our practices never remained unchallenged. And so that's, I think, the danger for me is when we just remain at this level.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. 1 second, hold that thought for 1 second. I just want to know, so it is 10:30. I want to say thank you all for everyone. If you would like to connect, there's my email address. And I think we have 10 or maybe 9 minutes now for the next session. Andrew, I think, put that in there. I'm going to stick around because I want to continue this conversation. And I invite you all to stick around too. However, I don't want to hold you all hostage. So feel free to log off if you would like to take a break in between sessions. So yeah, Edward, I'm with you. I'm all for social justice, and math is my background. So I didn't share any text actually that came directly from any math candidates. So just to be clear that that particular moment was not a math thing. And I would say that right. So I specifically didn't say social justice because I actually think about social justice as maybe one type of equity work, but not the only type of equity work. And not only that, but what social justice might look like and mean in math could be very different in science and in social studies and so on and so forth. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts? I mean, is it important? So I work with math candidates. I think it's important that every math candidate has that shared understanding. But I don't know if it's important for my math candidates to necessarily have the same social justice understanding as, say, their multiple subject colleagues. I don't know. What do you think? Are you advocating for everyone in the program has that shared understanding or that shared definition?
I am.
Or is it specific to the content areas or the grade level teachers?
I mean, all the disciplines can do it. All the content areas people are doing it and writing about it, and how, for example, that looks like. I mean, I was mentioning again in kindergarten, in art, right? We have social justice in art, in English classes. I mean, people are writing about that and have demonstrated. And again, we're not going to all agree on what that means, but we can at least move towards some shared understandings, some basic concepts of what that means. And so, but again, my concern is if all we're doing is just like, okay, I mean, that to me is a very basic of saying, you know what, we can't have any hate speech. We can't, but then in the larger structures of schools, what gets changed if all we're doing is just the basic work of allowing everybody to participate, of allowing people access, then the core curriculum is still reproducing inequality. When, even just think about core math. If that content is not challenged, then we're not really changing any of the structures of schools.
Yeah. So I want to be cautious though here. This is not. So none of this data that I was using was specifically asking for nor getting at anything social justice or even equity related. So I'm cautious not to say that this isn't happening, what you're talking about. Because these letters were not saying, I want you specifically to talk about the equity work that's happening with your mentor teacher. And these things might already be happening. And we just don't know because it's not in the data, and the data wasn't really trying to elicit that. So I'm with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I guess maybe I'm just wanting to be cautious about over analyzing or maybe
your talk was based on advocacy and equity, right? So that's why I was asking that question. Well, what does advocacy look like for these students? What are they trying to advocate and for who?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And then what does that look like? What is it changing?
Yeah. So okay. So I would say, go for it, Johnny. You want to jump in?
I apologize for interrupting. Just thinking about the three parts of this stool. So where do mentors sit with this too? One of the things that came up in our discussion was, if you're going to be thinking about advocacy and equity, who you place the teacher candidates with matters a whole lot, and what context that matters as well. So that part has to not just be assumed. So you can get a great mentor teacher, but you have to think about what they might be bringing to this as well.
Mhm.
And that becomes a bit of work, and it's a challenge for lots of programs, because how do you find those contexts where the kinds of work the university or institution might be advocating is being realized in a way that student teachers can learn from it. So
Well, I mean, it has to be triangulated, right? It has to be, like you mentioned, Johnny, it has to be the mentor teacher who is reflecting those values of the university or the program. And then it has to be the school, right? The administration that's also going to say, you know what, I'm supporting these types of teachers. And so I want them to include like social justice, because then I'm not going to come down on them, right? When something erupts, I'm going to protect them. And then it also has to be like the methods classes. Methods classes also teach explicit practices to invoke this, because then it's going to be a hit or miss, right? It's, well, this mentor teacher is modeling, but there's a whole bunch of teachers are not modeling that. So then how do we explicitly cultivate this, right? And then also the theoretical classes, so it has to be as a complete program to be able to say, these are the intentional things that we are doing.
we struggle because all the things, the good things we might be doing in the program with our courses and how we frame things in terms of equity and advocacy, there's always this hard time when some students will find themselves in placements where they're not seeing such things and they get disillusioned. And so that bit about, yes, this is how we want schools to be, but this is how schools are. And that becomes a challenge for us in our own supervision. Like,
Yes.
you know, we want them to be aspiring to things, but then how do they hold on to, so that whole thing about finding the right mentors, holding on to them. And so Matt, this work you're doing right here is just to hold up the idea that there are these great mentors who do this good work, and to make that plain, that it's not something that's strange or odd, but people do this. So appreciate the work, Matt.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the comments. And just to be clear, I'm not disagreeing with you by any stretch of the imagination. I definitely, I hear you.
Yeah. I'm just trying to have a conversation and push.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Well, thank
everybody.
you, everyone. There's probably about 2 more minutes for the next session. So unless there's any pressing questions or things, I'm gonna quickly grab some beverage and get ready for the next sessions.
All right, take care, everybody.
Thank you.